Happy Monday, and welcome back to the Lorden Arts channel. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here today. Case Cracked is the show where we look into a mystery, and what are the critical pieces that help solve that mystery. Today's case is called The Noisy Neighbor. It's November 6th, 1981, and even though Thanksgiving was on its way, residents of Phoenix, Arizona still felt the heat at nearly 80 degrees outside. 13-year-old Amy Yachimec was an 8th grader at Isaac Junior High School and was known to family and friends as a fun, sweet girl. At that time, she lived with her mother Cheryl, her sister Anita, and her brother William in an apartment community that her grandmother, Lila Birding, owned on the west block of Van Buren Street. At about 10 p.m. that night, Amy said goodnight to her family and went to her room. Anita was already in her room for the night. Later that evening, their mother Cheryl was called to the front door by the sound of someone pounding on it. When she opened it, she found one of their neighbors, Raymond Diaz, and his pregnant girlfriend. Diaz had no clothes on and was saying over and over, "They came to our house. What's wrong? What's wrong?" Cheryl had no idea what he was talking about, and after his girlfriend retrieved a blanket to wrap around Diaz, the two left. At 6 a.m. the next morning, Amy's grandmother, Lila, knocked on her door, but Amy wasn't there. It was soon realized that a door in Amy's room that led outside the apartment was unlocked. Fearing someone had abducted her, the police were called. When investigators arrived, they found no signs of forced entry. Amy's clothes, money, and house keys were found inside the apartment. When Anita was questioned, she told them that before Amy went to bed, she asked Anita if she wanted to go to a party with her. Anita said no, and Amy left her in her room. Because of this, Amy's mother believed that she left her personal items intentionally. If Cheryl had discovered any of those items gone, it would have alerted the family. By using the door in her room, Amy could sneak in and out undetected. If her daughter had snuck out, it would fit perfectly with the car that she heard leaving the complex around 10:30 p.m. Her mother felt at that point that something terrible had happened to her daughter. Investigators felt that Amy was actually a runaway. Cheryl told the press, quote, "She's never run away before, and I know in my heart that she didn't this time. I'm afraid that she may have been killed or sold to a pimp." When Diaz and his girlfriend were questioned, they claimed to have no knowledge of what happened to Amy. A witness came forward and stated that they had seen Amy in a 1964 dark blue 4-door Chevrolet sedan with aluminum wheels before she disappeared. Her mother had seen the same car the day after Amy disappeared, and it was driven by Diaz. In the beginning, Amy's disappearance was heavily publicized in the press, but as more time went by and few leads were found, everyone but her family started to lose interest. Fearing the worst, Cheryl searched their neighborhood for Amy or any clues to her whereabouts, as well as hiring 2 private investigators. Nobody found anything. "We don't know for sure whether she's dead or alive," Cheryl said. "We keep trying to live our everyday lives, but it's hard. It's especially hard for Anita because she attended the same school as Amy, and the kids keep asking about her." Investigators continued to work part-time on Amy's case, still treating her as a runaway until December, when an informant brought them some much-needed information. This person told police that the car Amy was driven in the night she disappeared was being driven by Diaz, but it wasn't his. He had borrowed it from a friend, and the informant knew who that friend was. When the car was finally tracked down, the owner said that, yes, he had allowed Diaz to borrow the car and that it was returned sometime after the 7th. He allowed a search, and investigators found hairs that were consistent with Amy's, as well as blood. They collected samples. As relatives and friends of Diaz were tracked down, one of his cousins had quite a story to tell. He claimed that on the night Amy disappeared, Diaz had brought Amy and his girlfriend to a party at the cousin's home. At some point, Diaz started to talk to his cousin about how attractive he found Amy and how much he wanted to have sex with her. Angry, his cousin told him he would not allow something like that to happen in his home. Soon after, the 3 left. With this new information, investigators now felt that foul play could be involved. Diaz and his girlfriend were brought in for questioning again, but were not arrested and were soon released. Her family now believed that Diaz and his girlfriend had simply knocked quietly on Amy's door the night she disappeared and took her to the party. I think she just went with them, Cheryl said. They also felt that Diaz was trying to get back at the family for a disagreement he had with Amy's grandmother, Lila. That Christmas, and for many after, Amy's presence would be left untouched, waiting for her return. Her case would go cold until 1988, when an anonymous tip made its way to investigators. It was claimed that Amy was murdered the night she disappeared and that her body was buried in the desert. With this tip, the case was finally reclassified as a homicide investigation and was then turned over to the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office after Phoenix police felt she had been killed in their jurisdiction. Still, they had insufficient evidence to make an arrest. Investigators continued to work her case for decades until finally, in March of 2015, the blood samples taken back in 1981 were tested with our current technology, and it was found to be a match to Diaz. This new evidence, added to everything else, finally allowed investigators to arrest and press charges against Diaz and his girlfriend. They wouldn't have to look very far for Diaz. He had been in prison since 1983, serving time for convictions of kidnapping, sexual assault, and other charges in a case not related to Amy's. In September of 2018, a now 61-year-old Diaz was arrested on first-degree murder charges. His girlfriend, however, could not be charged as she now suffers from severe mental illness. In July of 2021, Diaz agreed to a plea agreement. It allowed him to plead no contest to second-degree murder in Amy's killing. At his sentencing hearing on August 30th, 2021, he was given a sentence of 35 years with credit for time served on the unrelated cases. Prosecutors lamented the fact that if all the witnesses from the statements they took had still been alive, Diaz's sentence would have been significantly different. However, Amy's sister, Anita, recently posted on Facebook why this may have been the better course. Quote, "Our family chose to go with the plea agreement so my mom wouldn't have to sit through a trial and hear all the awful things that were done to my sister. Please respect our family decision on this." She also states that Diaz won't be eligible for parole until 2046, when he will be nearing 90 years old. In a victim's impact statement, Anita also said, "My sister Amy was kind, loving, happy, sincere, loyal, genuine, humble, affectionate, and most of all, a loving, caring soul. Amy had a smile that would lighten up a room. Amy trusted and cared for people without any hesitation. Unfortunately, this trust that Amy gave away so freely was used to lure her to her death. Today, and for the rest of our lives, we will mourn the loss of Amy. My mother and our family will never have complete closure because we will never have Amy's body to put to rest." The anniversary date of Amy's death is now celebrated in part as a happy day in the family. Amy's niece, Jasmine Woodward, was born on the same date Amy died, and it's reported she bears more than a passing resemblance to her aunt. If you have any information regarding Amy Marie Yachimec's case, and particularly the possible location of her remains, please contact the Maricopa County Sheriff's Department at 602-256-1000. Or, if you need to remain anonymous, you can contact Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-TIPS. Case cracked. I would like to thank the Resource Center for Cold Case Missing Children's Cases, websleuths.com, newspapers.com, Arizona Central, Arizona Family, and Anita Woodward Yachimec's page for Amy Marie Yachimec. Special thanks to Miss L for helping with research on this case, and of course, Christy Arnhart for also researching and writing it all up. Here is Christy now to discuss it with us. Christy, hearing about this story, looking into this case a little bit, of course, I think we have two major risk factors that come into play. And quite honestly, I don't know how to mitigate either of them outside of sharing these types of stories and hoping that families will talk to their children and loved ones about this kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
obviously, her having a mechanism for sneaking outside undetected, and then a group of adults that are enabling her in some way for, this type of behavior and possibly worse types of behavior. The thing I struggle with a little bit is when I was, I don't know, it was a little bit older than her. I would say like my, 15, 16-year-old range. I got into a little pattern of sneaking outside too. I'm just wondering, is it something that we all do?
Yeah, I think so.
You know?
The only reason I didn't sneak out, you know, young girl in the South with a daddy that everybody in school knew about. Come to think of, my parents would have never allowed us to have an outside door in our room that wasn't padlocked or something. We wouldn't be able to come in and out, and neither would anybody else. They wouldn't. They would not trust us.
Yeah, yeah. But I almost feel like, I don't know, almost like psychologically, it's like us learning or testing our limits or trying to be independent when
Yeah.
we're ready for it instead of our parents saying that we're ready for it.
Hmm.
So that's one of those things. I don't know how you mitigate it outside of, to your point. Uh, I mean, it's an apartment building, so it's not like one of
Hmm.
those things where you want to lock her in. It could be like a fire hazard or something like that. But if there was some way, and we're talking, this is a historical case, I get it. Nowadays, it's a bit easier. Like you can get some electronic, doohickey that you put on the door, and if it opens, your cell phone rings, or you can
Yeah.
get, surveillance or something on the outside of the door with a motion detector. Same thing. If the door opens, your cell phone kicks off.
Hmm.
But the adults enabling bad behavior, I really thought about this aspect too, because it kind of comes up as a trend. And there's this weird thing. If I had a teenager, I don't. I would think I would be focused on some type of conversation about, be weary about people that are approaching you that are at a much different age range than you. Because
Hmm.
I think there's usually some mechanism of them wanting something from you. Now, here with Diaz, we heard it was one of the worst things, that obviously he seemed attracted to this very, very young girl.
Hmm.
But it's not always that drastic. And
Yeah.
it could just be almost a feed for the adults in some way of like, oh, look, I've got another follower essentially, or I've
Hmm.
got this person that's now part of my social circle in some way. Or it could there's like different degrees of what those needs and wants are.
Hmm.
But anytime it's that inconsistent, like where you've got a big age gap like that, man, be careful,
Oh
please.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just this is another tragic example in a very long list of examples like this.
Hmm.
So I know because we didn't get to a full trial, we didn't get to really hear the prosecution's version. Like, prosecution would likely have a version of the story. We know that you did this. We think you also did this and this and that.
Yeah.
Did you get any further detail as to what they think actually happened around this?
I actually did find something from Anita, the sister, on Web Sleuths. She says that unfortunately, Amy went with these people, Diaz and his girlfriend, willingly. They befriended her, and she tried to wake me up the night she disappeared for good, but I didn't want to go. This was the second night that she had gone with them, and the only reason she was not murdered the first night is because they were stopped by the police, so they brought her back home.
That's interesting. So this is a pattern, and Anita knows about two of them. I think is probably a more accurate way of saying that. There might have been other instances where Amy went out and maybe didn't tell Anita about it or something, but
Yeah.
on a minimum, we know that this is a second. Okay, gotcha.
Mhm.
Anything else?
Well, she also says, from what detectives have told me, she went with the neighbors on the evening she disappeared and they went to a party. There are a few sketchy details as to all the events that happened after that. What we do know for sure is that she was taken out south on the 51 past the casino in a very bushy area.
Okay.
Diaz and his then girlfriend returned back to my grandmother's apartments and immediately came to our door and asked what was wrong.
And that's where we get the weirdness,
It
which
is.
is still like the only thing I could think of is there's got to be some substance abuse or something that's going on.
That was my first thought too.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
But it's interesting. They think that she was taken out to a bushy area. It just makes you wonder, like, what did they find in terms of evidence? Was there something else in the car, or like, were they looking at the tires? Like, there's something that led them to that conclusion. So that's another interesting point. Okay.
It is, and I wish they had elaborated, but
Yeah.
She continues to say they left not long after arriving home. From what the police know, they went back and buried my sister's body. And to this day, her remains have still not been found.
That is such a strange order of events. Like, for them to have taken her to a place, assaulted her, then gone back to the home, had this weird freak out at the door of the people, of the family, of the girl that you just took away, and then went back out to, like, this sounds, it sounds like it's being fueled by something. There's some drug that's in play here.
The only thing I could think of, aside from the drugs, was that he came back to the apartment and got into the shower to wash off evidence. They either heard something or assumed police had already found the body, and then the naked craziness happened.
Oh, yeah. Maybe they freaked out. That's a really good thought as well. And it makes sense for him to have gotten rid of the clothing and all that kind of stuff.
It does, but he was in his apartment. Good grief.
Yeah. But
how messed up was he that he didn't come out naked?
Yeah, exactly. If his perspective was tweaked enough, and then hearing that noise, like hearing something next door. Yeah. This story does not, I mean, I don't know. It's heartbreaking, and to think that this family dealt with that and has lived in it for decades at this point, and her sister is still having to put posts out about this, making
to have the man, they have the man, and he won't say anything about where she is. Nothing.
Yeah, that was really, really disappointing. We did have a clip of the sentencing that happened via Zoom, of course, and they gave him an opportunity to comment, and of course he didn't. But the reality of it at this point is he's basically in prison for life. I mean, is he going to make it to 90 years old? I don't know, but
I doubt it.
Yeah. Goodness, terrible. Well, Christy, thank you so much for all your hard work on this case. We really, really appreciate you, and I've got some other people to thank right now. Thank you, PayPal supporters Jennifer Wilson and Larissa Mertshank. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit lordandarts.com. There you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee like James Reed recently did. We know that learning about the mechanisms that help support and find justice in these cases is important to understand the many unsolved cases we also cover, and we really appreciate your support in allowing us to continue doing that. Remember, you can get another Lord and Art story every week on the Seriously Mysterious podcast. A new episode is coming tomorrow and every Tuesday after that. Visit seriouslymysterious.com and remember to subscribe on your favorite podcatchers. While you're here, don't forget to hit that bell icon below if you'd like to catch one of our weekly Secret Studio live shows. And of course, I'll be back with a new unsolved mystery for you on Friday, right here on the Lord and Arts channel.